What is the minimum cost for espresso setup that can deliver a great espresso if you're a do-it-yourselfer? And what if you're not a do-it-yourselfer? What if you do several lattes and espressos in a row? And supposing that you want the very high-end equipment, how much it would cost me? To answer those questions, I prepared a spreadsheet so that we can go through the costs and think about what could be a choice depending on your profile. In the end of the video, I'm going to show you the total for a low cost and for a cost benefit setup. If you are a do-it-yourselfer, you have the option to buy a second-hand machine, and then for $300 you can buy, for example, a Ranchillo Silvia in US or Europe for that. You will have probably to the scale to change some gaskets, maybe you'll have more stuff to check and refurbish, but it's a better machine than the very low costs that could be the Longhi Stilosa in Europe and US, or the Britannia 15 bar in Brazil. It looks that those machines are all the same, white label, commercialized by different brands, and these very low cost, the prices for a brand new. If you want to use a brand new machine, higher quality, then the price increases significantly. A Galia Classic can be found in the US for something around $400 to $500, and the Ranchillo Silvia is significantly more expensive. It's $900. In Europe, it's much more affordable. So what would be my choices here? For the very low cost, you don't have options, right? You need to go for those very cheap machines, and it doesn't matter a lot where you are. If you want a cost benefit setup, then I would go for a Gaggia or Ranchillo Silvia. If I'm in Europe, I would choose Ranchillo Silvia because the difference in price is not too much. But I think the bigger boiler that Ranchillo Silvia has, 300 mils against 130 in a Gaglia Classic, it's worth the price. And in the US, the difference is much higher, so maybe the cost benefit would be the Gaggia Classic. In Brazil, there are no Ranchillo Silvias available brand new, except if you import yourself. But I think the cost benefit option commercialized in Brazil today is the Gaggia Classic, and it will cost around $700. You also need to bear in mind that you will spend with the mods, so it's around $100 to install a dimmer, PID, and pressure gauge, probably twice this price in Brazil due to taxes. And Gadgeino, I included here the V4 kit set. It's the newest one, and this kit set includes all the small components that you will need: wires, thermostats, SSRs. It's not only the MCU and display, and also the scale, the dual scale board. I didn't include the time of flight. It's the module that allow you to see on screen how much water you have in your reservoir, but I think this was more nice to have. It's not expensive, it's around $30. You can include in your budget or not. And in this price, $300 is included freight, taxes, insurance to Europe. The prices will vary a bit depending on the country, so I recommend you to go to Coffee or DIY and simulate the cost for your place. One difference that I wanted to highlight is that when you buy the scale kit from Coffee, it comes with the load sensors, the screws, the magnets, and when you buy from DIY, it doesn't. So sometimes there's a little bit of a difference in price, and I don't think it's too much. I bought mine from Coffee due to this convenience. Otherwise, I would have to go to AliExpress and search all the other components myself. Then, what if you're not a do-it-yourselfer and you want to buy a machine with a stock PID, which is one of the most complicated mods, or the one that people are least comfortable with? And in those models, I think another benefit is that they all come with a pressure gauge installed. And sometimes it's a bit complicated because there are several details when you're buying the connectors, the fittings, the pressure gauge. So there are standards for the thread sizes, and you may have some leakage in your machine when you're installing. It requires a bit of attention, and some people prefer to avoid. And then we have, if you want to pay a bit more, for example, the Apex with a PID included, and this price is unbeatable for $100. The V2 is $500. But the problem is that this machine doesn't have a track record. It's new in the market, and we don't know how reliable it is, how durable. Some people prefer to buy a renowned brand like Profitec. They have the Profitec Go, but then the price is about 2.5 times higher than the Apex. It's around $1,000. And some people will prefer an E61 group. It's, in my opinion, more beautiful. It has a much larger drip tray. I think it's much more convenient than the machine that I chose for my setup is the CM Classic PID. But then it's around $1,500 in US or Europe, and in Brazil it's about $3,000. So it increases a lot your cost here. One thing that I wanted to highlight is that some people criticize the 61 group, saying that it doesn't have temperature stability because the group radiates a lot of heat, and then it becomes unpredictable. This is not true. This happens only in heat exchanger machines. I tested. I can share a video another time, but it doesn't happen with the single boilers or dual boilers with PID. It's only in machines with heat exchangers. And what is this machine for? These are for people who make a few espressos, maybe 1 or 2 lattes, but not several lattes in a row. And why is that? Because with a single boiler, if you make several lattes in a row, you will have to wait a bit for the machine to heat from your brew temperature to your steam temperature, and then to cool down from steam temperature to brew temperature. Of course, you can flush and accelerate the temperature drop, but it may be a little inconvenient and it will take you more time than if you use a heat exchanger or a dual boiler. But then the price will increase as well, as we are going to see further. With a single boiler, PID, and flow control, I think you don't need anything more in terms of machine to get your perfect espresso. Then you will have to focus on other stuff like grinder and accessories, but we'll see that later. Okay, for a single boiler with stock PID, what would be my choice? So the low cost, I think it's Apex, it's a no-brainer, but then the risk is on the durability, the reliability of this machine, and maintainability as well. For the super nerds, if you want to have all the controls in your machine and all the information from your extraction, including a screen showing in real time how your extraction is going, then on top of the Gajuino mod, I wanted to highlight 2 other options. The benchmark is Decent, okay? Decent has machines that will start around $4,000 because you will have to include freight, importation taxes, VAT, and one or another accessory. Then I made a very simple customization, and without any addition, it's about $4,000. Then you have Kef Mazzino. Kef Mazzino, it's a bit similar to Apex. They are new in the market. They don't have much track record. Mechanically, it looks like it's the same machine, but then they added all the sensors, the actuators, and the MCU stream to give you the Decent at a low cost. If you see the price, it's about a third, but it is still double the price of a Gajuino. And they will deliver basically the same quality, okay? Of course, there are some advantages in getting a Decent, but I think the price is not for everyone. Then I would focus maybe here. And if you want the cost-benefit option, I would opt for the Kef Mazzino and the lower cost for the Gajuino. You also need to take into consideration that Gajuino you will have to modify yourself, and if you want full control, but you're not a do-it-yourselfer, then you want to have Kef Mazzino and Decent today. Well, then I put in the list the Super Alto, because some people will want to have a good espresso and in a convenient way. So maybe as a reference, you have 2 machines that I listed here. There are many others, but I don't think it's the focus of this video. But as a reference, you can buy for something around $400 or $900 a machine like that. And but just as a reference, in Brazil, you're gonna pay like $900 in Super Alto, and in Europe and US about $400. I think they will not be able to deliver a very good cup of espresso, especially if you're using light roasts, but they can deliver, let's say, a good enough espresso. Maybe it depends on how exigent you are. I, for example, I would not have a Super Alto at my home. Then let's say that you need speed, you're late in the morning, you don't want to wait like 15 to 30 minutes for your machine and the group head and portafilter to heat to the optimum temperature. Then I think the option is the thermal block if you don't want to spend a lot, and if you want a better cup than in a Super Alto, because then in those thermal blocks you will be able to control the grind size, and you will do your pot preparation. And in this case, the machines that I would recommend are those ones here. So basically you have here 51 or 54 millimeters that in my opinion they will be inconvenient if you upgrade it, because you will have to change your temper, your distributor if you have, and some other accessories. So bear in mind that if you are in this hobby, you will probably upgrading to a 58 millimeter machine in the future, and then you will have to change your setup. However, they are much less expensive if you want to sacrifice a bit the quality in the cup. These machines, they don't have a very good control of the temperature. Some of them have 3 to 5 temperature adjustments, but it's by far very less precise and stable than a PID. Thermal blocks are very difficult to control, and you cannot install a PID as well. So you won't have a temperature stability with those machines, but some people say that they can get good cups from Breville, for example. And what would be my choices in this case? So if you want to spend the least as possible, the Longderica in Europe and US, and in Brazil, I think Oster Compacta is the white label, very similar to those ones, and the price is affordable. You also have the Longdericas in Brazil, but it's about twice the price of an Oster Compacta. And if you are willing to have a cost benefit, then I think the Breville Bambino in the US and Europe is the best option. And in Brazil, maybe Oster Expert Perfect Brew, also because you have a 58 millimeter group, and then you will save in your upgrades in the future. quality is very similar to the Breville. Some people prefer the Breville, some people prefer the Oster. So, but I don't think it's a major difference. It's more preferences, more what you want to sacrifice. Maybe the Breville can deliver a better cup, slightly better. Some people say that the Oster Expert cannot achieve the right temperature, but I think both will have small advantages and disadvantages, and there's not right or wrong here, but I would go for an Oster. Now, if you want to get good quality in your cup, you need to prepare several espressos and lattes in a row. Then I think the heat exchanger would be the best option for you. The prices are significantly higher than a single boiler, as you can see here. It starts in $1,300 with the Lely Marax. What is the problem with heat exchangers? The temperature stability, if you leave the machine heating for a long time, like an hour and 30 minutes, it can be a bit unpredictable. Right? Lance Hedrick has some videos about it. I recommend you to check. You can minimize the problem by installing a thermometer in the group and flushing the machine before extracting, but it's still difficult to control the temperature. So it will deliver a good espresso, not the perfect for the obsessive in quality for espressos. However, it allows you to prepare multiple lattes in a row because it has a big boiler for your steam and a small boiler inside the steam boiler for brewing. It will not allow you to extract and the steam at the same time like you can do with a dual boiler, but I don't think it's an issue in a domestic environment in general. But we are not skilled enough to do the two things at the same time. But even if you are, you're sacrificing a few seconds. It's not a big difference in your workflow, right? I think it makes a lot of sense for cafeteria, but not in a domestic environment. And what would be my choice if I was buying a heat exchanger? In Europe and US, the low cost would be the Lely Marax. And I also think it's the cost benefit because the price is significantly below the competitors. It's $1,400. Maybe some people will prefer the Rocket, but yeah, you need to spend about 30% more if you want a Rocket. And I don't see a big advantage in your cup. Well, if you're in Brazil, the only brand that is commercializing a top heat exchanger is Rocket, but it's $3,000. So I don't know if I would buy that one. Maybe I would import the Lely from Espresso Coffee Shop. I would save maybe $800, but some people are not comfortable in importing themselves the machines. They want a retailer to be in Brazil providing all the support, maintenance, and warranty. If you buy from Espresso Coffee Shop and you have any issue, you will have to ship it overseas. It's unlikely, and for the difference in price, maybe it's worth, and then you can pay for the maintenance yourself in Brazil. But I can understand that some people are not comfortable with that option. Another thing that you can see is that for $1,400 in a heat exchanger, you will not have the same quality, the same control that you have, for example, if you buy the Caffè Mazzino. You will not have the perfect espresso like you have in an ECM Classica PAD. The downside is that here you will not be able to prepare several lattes and espressos in a row, but the quality in the cup, the convenience of not having to flush your group before extracting and wasting water, energy, time, I think it's also a bit messy. In this case, if you don't make lots of lattes, well, in my opinion, an ECM Classica PAD is much better than Lely Marax. But this point that you need to decide here is how many lattes you will make in a row and how inconvenient it is for you to wait a bit until the machine is heating up and cooling down. And then we have the dual boilers. The dual boilers is the perfect scenario, right? Because it has a boiler for your espresso and it has PAD in this case, then you can have your perfect espresso, but it also has a separate boiler for steaming. Then you will be able to extract and steam at the same time or right after if you're not skilled enough for that. But it will cost a lot more, right? So my choice in this case would be the Lely Bianca. Lely Bianca was also a machine that I considered, even if I don't make lattes, because it comes with the flow control in the V3. But the price is almost the double of the ECM Classica PAD. Then I preferred to maybe install myself the flow control later, which costs about $300, and I didn't buy the Lely Bianca. Also, I believe that the construction, the build quality of ECM is a little better than Lely and Profitec. If you want to buy a dual boiler, I think the least expensive is the Lely Elizabeth. But Lely Elizabeth is maybe less beautiful than an E61 machine. It looks more like a domestic machine, like a Profitec Go or Rancilio Silvia, that square shape and smaller footprint. Lely Bianca is much more beautiful, in my opinion. It has an E61 group, which can be a downside for people who have children that may get burned in the group, maybe not, depending on how is your coffee corner organized. And yeah, my choices would be the Lely Elizabeth if I wanted to save the most I could, if I couldn't afford the Lely Bianca, but still needed multiple espressos and lattes. But the cost benefit for me, if I could afford, would be the Lely Bianca. Again, I want to call your attention to this price range, 1400. It's the same price that you can buy a ECM Classica PAD or a Caffè Mazzino. And then what is the key point for you to decide if you have 1400 to spend in a coffee machine. If you make several espressos and lattes in a row, if you don't want to wait for the machine to heat up or cool down, I think your choice is the Elizabeth. Well, I want something that is more beautiful. I want a very large drip tray. I think it's more convenient. Well, that was my decision, and I chose the ECM Classica PID. Maybe you're not willing to wait a lot between the lattes and espressos, but you're not so obsessive with the quality of your espresso, and you're okay to flush your machine, and you're okay with that temperature instability, or you will not keep your machine on for more than an hour, then maybe the Lilima Rex can be an option. But if you want full control on your parameters, if you want to program your machine to extract exactly as you want, if you want all the nerdy stuff, then maybe you will go for a Cafe Mezzino. So these are the trade-offs that you're gonna make. And then Brazil. Well, dual boilers in Brazil, high quality, beautiful, top notch, super expensive, $6,000. It's more expensive than a decent. I can't believe how much we pay in taxes in Brazil, but it is what it is, right? If you want to buy from a retailer in Brazil that will give you support, maintenance, the warranty, you will have to pay almost $6,000 for a dual boiler. But I don't know, I think in my case, I would take the risk, import from Espresso Coffee Shop myself, and pay $2,400. Several people that I know imported machines from Espresso Coffee Shop. It all went well, but if you have any problem and you need to enforce your warranty, you will have to ship your machine back to Italy or Spain. And you may be wondering, what is this 7000 machine here? I put this machine just as a benchmark because La Marzocco DS3 is one of the machines that people dream about, not me, but it costs around $7,000. So just for you to see that espresso machine can be very expensive, from $100 to $7,000. And I didn't list several machines for every category because this video would be too long, right? What about grinders? Well, grinders, you will have to choose between hand grinders or electrical grinders. And the scenario changed a lot for grinders in the last 3 to 5 years. What would be my choices? If you want the least expensive grinder, you will have to opt for a hand grinder. It will take 1 minute for you to grind for espresso. Maybe it's a bit hard to grind for you. I used hand grinders for 2 or 3 years, I think, and it was okay for me, but it's not for everyone. And some people may have some physical limitations, so I recognize that it's not for everyone, but the price starts at $56. And this would be my option if I wanted the lowest cost possible, the King Grinder P1. However, you have some cost benefit options. That would be the J1 Pro. It's okay, almost twice the price, but I think it's worth the benefits. For example, having external adjustment. I brought also the 1Zpresso Key 2 here because it's portable. You can put inside your AeroPress when you're traveling. They can be very convenient and it produces a decent quality. So maybe something to consider. Have in mind that some people don't like only espresso, right? Then the intermediary level, I would opt for King Grinder K6 or EasyPresso J Ultra. The Ultra will provide a more balanced cup and the K6 more clarity. However, to my opinion, K6 takes a while to grind for espresso. So a lot of people use and they are okay with that. If you want to go to the more high-end hand grinders, then maybe in Brazil I would buy the Bravito, Bravo YT, and in Europe and US, Kinyu M47. And these 3 grinders here I brought because they are a reference. EasyPresso ZP6 is the one that won the last Brewers World Cup, and it provides a lot of clarity. People say that only Pietro has more clarity than ZP6, but it's almost twice the price. Lots of pros and cons for each one. And Commandant C40 is like the gold standard, the one that it's for longer here, lots of fans. I don't really like compared to the K6, and I think the quality in the cup is pretty similar. So I opted for K6 because it has an external adjustment, and I think it's very inconvenient to have internal adjustment in the C40. But you may also want to consider this new grinder in the market, CaffeSync, because it has swappable burrs. Then you can use like a flat burr and a ghost burr in the same grinder. Not my choice, but you may check. Then if you are opting for an electrical grinder, the grinders that I think you need to pay attention are the DF54 and the F64. The price for the F54 is unbeatable, okay? $230 in US, maybe 340 in Europe, in Brazil about $400, but a great electrical grinder that delivers a very good cup for a price that sometimes is less expensive than a hand grinder. Why I would buy the DF64? By the way, I just bought one with the SSP burrs. The main reason is because you can swap the burrs. You can use the famous SSP burrs, but it will cost about $200 each pair in US or in Europe. You also have some other options in this price range. For example, Eureka is very famous. It's around $350 or $400 in Europe. In US is a bit more expensive, but in Europe you have option O, Lagoon Mini. People like Lagoon Mini and the other Lagoon Femini. Another interesting option is the old Arco for people in Europe. It's around $500, but this is a hybrid model. It has the option of using it as a hand grinder or electrical grinder and relatively portable. And for many years, people bought a lot of Baratza Sette, the 270 for espresso, not the 30. The 30 is more for filter, but nowadays I don't think it's worth buying a Baratza Sette. But the difference that you may want to consider is that this is a conical burr. If you use flat burrs, it will provide more clarity, but you may need to align, and it's a bit boring to align flat burrs, and you don't have those problems with conical burrs in general. Well, what about if you're going to the high-end grinders? Well, in this case, I would buy the DF83V, or maybe the Time War Sculptor 078S for espresso. The 078 is for more for filter. If you make espresso, it's the 078S. They have a variable speed, they have a big burst, they have very nice reviews. It's difficult to choose between one or another. I don't think there's a right or wrong choice here. That's why I market both as a cost-benefit setup, but it's not everyone that can afford $800 in a grinder, or not everybody wants to spend $800 in a grinder. And then you may opt for the Baratza, then you have the Vari W or Forte AP. I would opt for the Forte AP in this case, but to save $160, yeah, I would buy the DF83. And just as a reference, you also have the super high-end grinders, right? And you can pay something like $3.8 thousand for the high-end grinders. The reference here before the more modern grinders is the Malconic E43S. There are others, but I just brought one as a benchmark. Recently, they launched those EG1 and Cafetech, and they cost almost $4,000. I would choose one of these, not EK43, but well, maybe not for the price. In the high-end range, my dream would be the Zerno. You can see the reviews about it, but it's a 64mm, very well made, swappable burrs. There are SSP burrs for this grinder, so more versatile for the home barista, the nerd home barista. But it's twice the price of the Time War Sculptor or the DF83V, and it's not immediately available. You need to enter into a wait list, and then in about a year, it will be delivered to you. And finally, we have the accessories. In the accessories, you need at least a temper. Then you have the very cheap option for $10, or the more expensive option that has a good quality benefit ratio. And yeah, maybe you can buy the Normcore or the 3-bomber. I have both. I like most the Normcore, but there's not a big difference. That's why I'm recommending here the 3-bomber. You also need a scale. You can use those very cheap $5 ones. I don't think in the long term you will keep this one. And then my recommendation is to spend at least $35 in a Tiny 2S or similar. There's one from 3-bomber, there's another from Fuego, and other brands, but just as a reference, those two. WDT, I also think it's mandatory. The good cup preparation will influence a lot the quality of your beverage, and it's relatively cheap. And in this case, you can spend between $4 and $30. The $30 is maybe not necessary, but you may not like the $4 option, and we want to have a beautiful setup as well, so maybe worth spending $20 more. Bottomless portafilters will help you a lot to understand your extraction, if it is going well or not, so I really recommend that one, and it will cost around $22 to $40, a good bottomless portafilter. Also recommended is a good basket. The filter from IMS is the gold standard, but Barista Pro has also very good filters, and there are the new high extraction baskets like the Dex from MHW3-bomber. The high extraction baskets will extract more in less time, so you will probably see in the 25 to 30 second shot a more bitter beverage, but I think it's worth the test. I tried this one from the Bomber, and I think it's quite okay. Right now I'm using the IMS. I don't think there's a big difference, but yeah, maybe you want to try. But for the minimum setup, I would recommend only one in this $30 range. Choose what is less expensive for you. If you want to go for the standards, IMS or Barista Pro, depending on where you are. And then when you go deeper into the hobby, you can choose among many other brands, options, and features. Puck screen will help you to have a cleaner shower screen. It will reduce your maintenance. I think it's more convenient than improves the quality, but it also leads to a bit more extraction, maybe not noticeable for many of us, but it increases the percentage of extraction, just for you to have in mind. But the main benefit for me is have a cleaner shower screen that I can just flush. I don't need to use a brush all the time. It's more convenient than necessary. Dosing ring, I would recommend a dosing ring because it's cheap and it helps avoid the mess in your coffee corner. And here you have the $4 option. The magnets are not very good, but you can also spend $12 more and buy a better quality dosing funnel. And then my recommendation is the one from 3-bomber, but there are similar options for this price range. I recommend a lot of products from 3-bomber because I think they have very good quality for the cost, and in general they are beautiful and well made. 1 point highlight: so some of those rings, they have an internal rim that will enter into your basket and it will create a ring around your puck, and I don't think this will favor your coffee, so I don't like it. There's no evidence that it will have any effect or that it will lead to a worse cup, but I don't think it will favor your extraction, right? We are obsessive with the very even extract, the very good preparation, and then you will put a ring inside your filter. I don't think it's a good idea. Then these other stuff are nice to have. It will help to reduce the mess in your coffee corner. It may help you to keep it more clean, and I just recommend because they are very cheap. And then what would be the final cost if you are trying to save the most you can, or if you're just starting in the hobby? The espresso machine would be something around 270 to 400 if you buy those Apex or the second hand or the very low cost with the mods. Hand grinders, the minimum you would spend is $56, and then in accessories around $90 in Europe and US, and you're gonna pay twice this price if you're in Brazil. So the minimum setup is around $500, I would say. If you want to have a intermediate setup that will allow you to keep for maybe 1 or 2 years before you go down the rabbit hole, I think you can spend around $1,000 in a Profitec Go, for example, or a Galio Classic in Brazil with some mods. The grinder, in this case, I would opt for the electro grinder, the DF54, that will cost around $200 in US, $300 in Europe, and $400 in Brazil. And in terms of accessories, with the recommendations that I made, you will spend around $240 in US and Europe, and twice this in Brazil. And the total would be $1,500 in US and Europe, and maybe $1,800 in Brazil. I will make this table available for you. And as you can see, there are links for all the items that I mentioned. And then you can check in detail the specs and the prices and maybe buy some of this stuff. Some of those links are affiliate links. You will not pay anything more for that, but I may receive a small commission. Some others are not, just for transparency. Of course, you can spend a lot more. There are lots of other options available in the market. I didn't want to list all of them because it's impossible. It's just to give a reference, and using the main products that I've seen in the market that I considered to buy, that I saw some reviews because I was choosing between one or another. And then I brought here the options that you could consider if you're starting in the hobby and building your setup. And for you to have an idea of budget, if you're willing to start, how much you would spend, it's around 500 to 1500 to start. Okay.